Well, I saw it, and as I expected, it was overhyped to hell. This movie was not good. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because everyone seems to love this movie, and I'm just not seeing it. And honestly, if you were to ask me if I prefer the movie version that came out or the one made for TV in 1990 starring Tim Curry, if we're only talking about the first half of that miniseries, that first half was way better than this movie. Yeah, the movie initially tricked me into thinking it was going to be good because, admittedly, the first part of the movie isn't bad. The intro, in particular, where you get to see the interaction between Bill and Georgie, is done well. The cinematography is great. When he first goes outside into the storm, you're like, oh man, this is pretty intense because you know what's going to happen, at least if you've read the book or seen the 1990 version. And when Pennywise first arrives, he acts just like a happy clown, and he has some good dialogue exchange between him and Georgie. But the movie starts going downhill from the point Pennywise meets Georgie in the storm drain. It happens that fast because they ruin the kill. They ruin the kill. His teeth extract into these sharp rows, and when he bites down on Georgie's arm, number one, he's got this big silly grimace as he bites down, and it just looks like funny. It doesn't look scary when you have Pennywise smiling as he bites down on Georgie. Secondly, they censor the kill. I mean, you'd think they wouldn't because it's rated R, but they censor the kill because you get the clamp down on the arm, but you don't actually get to see the arm sever. They do a cut, Georgie falls back, and his arm is missing. And then they do this weird thing with the camera where they speed it up, where Georgie's crawling away crying, and Pennywise's arm just slowly comes out of the gutter and pulls Georgie back in. And then, even though he's bleeding to death, he still has the strength in him to yell out, "Billy!" as he's dragged into the darkness. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been bitten by anything or been in immense pain, but I doubt you have the presence of mind to, scream someone's name out dramatically when you're going into shock from blood loss, you know? And that was supposed to be the best kill in the movie, and it's ruined by the silly CGI and the weird director's choice to have to have Georgie still be alive for quite a long time after getting his arm chomped off and dramatically screaming as he gets sucked into the darkness where he meets his end. I mean, in the original one, the miniseries in 1990, it was done a lot better. I'm not going to say Skarsgard was bad as Pennywise in the initial scene because the interaction between them, as I said before, was good, but the kill was done better in the miniseries, which had to be censored for network television. I mean, that's incredible. At least when it kills Georgie in the 90 version, you're left to the imagination, but later on you see a funeral and you get exposition that his arm was torn off and he was left to die from a bleed out. Sometimes less is more, and it worked out better in the miniseries. Now, the movie could have done that kill better if they had actually shown the kill and, maybe Georgie died in the street from blood loss. Maybe you have Georgie say Bill's name, like, right as he takes his last breath. Make it less dramatic, you make it more sad, and you actually show the arm getting bitten off. That's how I would have done it, and that would have been done better. And when I bring up the kill, honestly, the biggest pet peeve is the CGI, which is just bad all throughout the movie. I mean, it's worse in that first scene, which is disappointing. That's the worst it gets, but that's like the most iconic kill. So why would you, skimp out on the cash to make that scene look real? But all the other CGI is not all that good. There's only like one part where it looks okay, and that's where the blood starts coming out of the sink and dousing Beverly. Although that was kind of done to a ridiculous level. The whole bathroom ended up looking like it was covered in Tabasco sauce or something. It kind of made me laugh because you just get like a fountain of blood just like pushing her to the ceiling practically. it came off as a little overdone. The rest of the CGI wasn't. It just didn't look real, and nothing takes you out of the experience more than bad CGI. We saw that with the Thing prequel that was made a few years back, and that movie bombed. Everyone hated it for good reason, and a large part of it was because they didn't use practical effects. They just used bad CGI, and this would have been the perfect opportunity to use practical effects because it was an homage to the 80s. They even changed the setting from the 50s to the 80s, starting at the point where they're all kids. So why not use practical effects in a lot of Pennywise's kills? I mean, they show New Kids on the Block and the movie theater shows Nightmare on Elm Street 5 playing, but you can't go with the practical effects to actually make your kills look good. Speaking of Pennywise's transformations, a lot of them were just pretty lame. There's one where he turns into like some headless kid after Ben Hanscom is looking at some history book pictures of Old Town Derry, and you see a kid's head in a tree. So then he starts finding all these Easter eggs and goes into the library basement where Pennywise turns into like a headless kid that runs at him before turning into the clown. There was another one where, oh yeah, he turns into a bunch of burnt arms coming out of a door when he encounters Mike Hanlon. Beverly was the blood. He turns into the leper when he encounters Eddie in front of Neibolt Street, which happened in the book. He turns into like some weird lady in a painting that has, of course, the it teeth. He doesn't turn into a werewolf, but he shows some werewolf claws at some point. The thing is that the transformations looked pretty stupid. And the thing is, they don't show any of the cool transformations from the book. You'd think, okay, it's rated R. They're going to focus primarily on Pennywise. You'd think they'd show the coolest stuff from the book. I mean, in the book, there's a point where he turns into the creature from the Black Lagoon and twists some kid's head off. It doesn't turn into that. When he kills one of the bullies, Patrick, he turns into a swarm of blood-sucking leeches and kills him. In the movie, when he kills Patrick, he initially shows up as some floating corpses, and then he brings out a red balloon, turns into a clown, and then rushes at him as the clown and bites him. And he kills him in the sewer. I don't know why they changed his kill for that. He doesn't turn into the Paul Bunyan statue. He doesn't turn into the shark from Jaws. He doesn't turn into the swarm of piranhas. He doesn't turn into the giant bird. I mean, there's so many things he could have turned into that they decided not to show, and it just boggles the mind why they would not even show those if the focus was on Pennywise and how scary he is. What makes the bad CGI worse in this movie is that none of the kills are explicit. You think they would be because the movie's rated R, but it's not rated R because it shows gruesome kills. No, it's rated R because they wanted some dick joke banter and F-word exchanges between Eddie and Richie. And look, don't get me wrong, it's funny the first couple times. Like, I laughed at some of the dialogue between them, but it's just done over and over, and that's when you realize that that's what the R rating was for, you're just like, really? I would have rather toned down the dialogue and made the kills worse to get that R rating, not the way they did it. For example, when Pennywise turns into the leper in the movie, he just offers Eddie some medication because Eddie had dropped his pills, and he picks him up and he starts making like a sucky face, like, you want to take your medication, Eddie? And then he screams like, oh my god, it's a leper, germs, and starts running away. And then you get this awkward looking chase scene where he's hobbling around as the leper after him. They could have done it like the book, and kept that bad dialogue there. Why not let Pennywise have some sick dialogue? Because Pennywise in the book was a pervert. When he turns into the leper and encounters Eddie, he offers him a blowjob. They could have put in this movie Pennywise going like, how about a BJ, Eddie? That would have been kind of funny and freaking sick and disgusting at the same time. But no, they don't do that. Personally, what I was hoping most to be in the movie was the encounter where Ben sees Pennywise on the river in the snowstorm, and he starts coming at him closer with the row of balloons and almost grabs him. I think that would have been a better Pennywise encounter than meeting him in the library. Because Ben alone in a snowstorm at night encountering Pennywise would have been much creepier than seeing him in a library basement. Speaking of bad CGI and missed opportunity with the Pennywise transformations, what the hell is with his Deadlights form in this? They were pathetic. They were pathetic. That's one of the things I was really looking forward to because I thought they would do something cool with it, but no. He lifts up Beverly, extracts his teeth like he's so fond of doing in the movie, and then you see like a couple little wiggly orange lights. Those are his deadlights, really? You don't look at that and go, yeah, I could see how someone goes crazy from looking at that. It's just like, this is so underwhelming. The 1990 version did it so much better because when it turned into the deadlights, he's going through the pipes and the sewers, and the white lights are like jutting out of the pipes, and then you see him hovering on top of the bullies who went after the kids in the sewers. And then it gets even creepier where he sucks up Belch and kills him, and then turns Henry Bowers crazy, and he kills the other bully in there. The deadlights were scarier in the miniseries. It's crazy. Another thing is that aside from the first maybe 10 minutes of this movie, from the start until Georgie just about dies, outside of that, there's no sense of atmosphere in this movie. You've got no sense of tension, no sense of dread. In the miniseries, when they showed the exterior shots of Derry, it actually seemed pretty depressing. You could see that this is a town that has its influence over it. Derry in this just looks like any normal town. You wouldn't figure that it had some sort of influence over the inhabitants like he does in the book. It looks perfectly normal, and it doesn't seem like any of the adults are really affected by his presence. Not that much, really. Another thing that makes the lack of R-rated kills in this movie so disappointing is that most of the movie is based on Pennywise's interaction with the kids. There's not much focused on the kids just hanging out and developing a relationship. Most of it follows every kid's individual encounter with Pennywise, and there's little rest in between, meaning they'll go from Ben's encounter with Pennywise and Narrow Escape to the next scene being Bill's, to the next scene being Eddie's, and it feels like a bunch of disjointed scenes just attached together with no real flow. And because it's set up that way, you would expect at least what they show to make it worth it, because the story doesn't really flow all that well. But all the action you see isn't really good. And that's one of the things the miniseries did better. Because they couldn't show explicit kills on TV, they did focus a lot on the developing relationship between the kids, how they initially start off as strangers and then grow to form a close relationship that ends up being able to beat Pennywise back. In the movie that just came out, you can't really tell that they're all that close. You figure that they're only hanging out together because they all just happen to be the ones who saw the clown. They don't seem to like each other all that much, and at one point in the movie, Bill gets in a fight with Eddie and even punches him to the ground. He just comes off as a jerk. Speaking of the kids, I don't really have any problems with them. For the most part, I think they were cast well. Beverly in particular, I thought she was cast really well, and I think she was definitely the best actress in the movie. Really, I think the only kind of weak character in the Losers Club was Bill, because his stutter didn't really seem all that authentic. It kind of seemed like he was making a fake stutter throughout the film. But, that's just a minor complaint. So the kids in this movie were fine. I didn't really have an issue with them so much as I had an issue with what the script has them do. Stanley Uris, for example, seems kind of tacked on. They don't really have him do much throughout the movie. They sort of start with the story about how he's not really serious about his Hebrew studies, but then that just ends right there. They don't really do anything with it. Mike Hanlon kind of feels tacked on as well. You get some exposition about how his parents died, but he doesn't really seem to have much importance. In the 1990 version, he seemed like the anchor that held the group together, because he's the one who was at the library all the time. He's the one who did all the research. That sort of goes to Ben Hanscom in this movie, which is closer to the book. But then Mike Hanlon doesn't really do much in this. And the bullies seem to hate Mike Hanlon just because he's new in town. At least in the miniseries, they actually explicitly said why they hated him, which was racism. Here, they'd rather, that subject is too taboo for them, so, they just hate him because he's the new kid. Which, incidentally, is the same reason why they hate Ben Hanscom. In the miniseries, they at least showed you why Henry Bowers hated Ben, because he made fun of his weight and then got sent to summer school, so he blamed Ben for it. And here, you're introduced to Ben, and you're just told, oh, Henry Bowers is waiting for him. Why? I don't know, because Henry just hates everybody. Actually, the bullies were pretty crappy in this movie. Henry Bowers is just some loud kid with a mullet. I mean, yeah, the greaser thing in the miniseries wasn't all that compelling, but at least they had some charisma about them. Henry Bowers is just an angry kid in this, and the bullies, they're just there. I think the only thing I recognized about Belch was, I remember he wore an Anthrax t-shirt. That's about it. For some reason, Beverly was highly sexualized in this movie. Not only do you have her father ogling her at home, but then you have the other members of the Losers Club checking her out when she's hanging out with them. And the reason why everyone hates her at school is because she's apparently a slut. It was a little uncomfortable. I didn't quite like it as much as the miniseries, where the reason she was an outcast was because her father was a school janitor and the wealthy kids there looked down on her for that. I mean, look, if you're not going to go explicit with the kills, why would you get more suggestive on the whole sexualizing a kid thing? It's just icky. I actually liked Eddie the most out of the Losers Club because his dialogue is really funny, but he doesn't really come off as frail in the movie like he's supposed to be in the book. In the book, he's supposed to be like a sickly kid who's, always getting hurt. In this, he comes off as a lot more boisterous. He has a lot of like witty banter between him and Richie, but he doesn't really seem all that helpless. He's just a smaller dude. At least in the miniseries, the kid who played Eddie, he actually looked sickly and was constantly using an inhaler, and you really felt like you had to protect the guy. With Eddie here, you feel like, oh, he could kind of take care of himself. And that brings me to Pennywise. I did not like Pennywise in this movie. I really didn't. And, part of it, I think, was Skarsgård's choices. Most of it, I think, was the script. Now, look, everyone likes to say that Tim Curry was goofy in the miniseries, which he was, but that was mostly confined to the second part. Yeah, he was goofy in the first part too, but that was done specifically with a purpose. He did that to lull the kids into a false sense of security. Out of nowhere, he would turn extremely evil and mean looking and then go in for the kill and, bite down on you or, kill you in some gruesome way. Take, for example, the scene in the beginning of the movie where he says hi between the laundry to that little girl on the tricycle, and you think he's a nice, friendly clown. And then when the sheets move aside, you see Tim Curry has this evil scowl on his face, and you're just like, holy crap. And then he goes in for the kill and mutilates her body. There's a big difference between his friendly demeanor and when he actually turned all evil and killed you. So acting silly when Tim Curry played Pennywise was done with a purpose, because you could see how a kid could fall into that false sense of security and think, okay, yeah, he's just a friendly clown dude. And that's what leaves him exposed to get murdered. Here, he just looks like a psycho from the beginning. Like, who would ever talk to this Pennywise guy? I mean, even Georgie, you think, like, this guy just looks creepy in the beginning. I don't care how nice he's talking to me. I wouldn't go near him in the sewer. Yeah, he starts off nice at first in the sewer, but then he suddenly gets this dark look on his face, which makes Georgie uncomfortable. But then why would he still go in to reach for the boat? It makes it totally unbelievable that Georgie would still go for the paper boat when you have Skarsgård Pennywise going like, here, take, and having all this drool coming out of his mouth. Like, hell no. Of course he wouldn't do that. At least Tim Curry was nice when he's like, here, take it. And then only once he got close enough, that's the only point where he suddenly got evil and then went in for the grab. Take Tim Curry's Prince Albert in a Can jokes in the second half of the miniseries where they're all adults and compare that to Pennywise in this version. They're both about equally as goofy. The thing is, Pennywise looks like a psycho, but he acts silly the whole time, and there's no variety in his emotions. Every single time you see Pennywise going for the kill in this movie, it's the exact same setup. He starts off as a monster, then turns into the smiley clown, and then bites down on them with a smile. There's no variety there. There's no variety in Pennywise's emotions. He's just like a smiley, goofy dude. He honestly comes off as like a dude in drag who dressed like a clown. Like, you wanna say that Tim Curry joked in the miniseries? Yeah, sure. But what about in this one? I mean, in Nebold Street, one of them, I think it was Eddie, says, "Oh, I'm not afraid of you. You're not scary." And Skarsgård goes like, "Oh, I'm not scary enough for you. Oh," and starts making this fake crying face, and you're like, that's the scary clown? He's coming off pretty goofy here to me. Pennywise just has one flat emotion in this whole thing. It's that smiley grin. So you can never tell when he's actually scared of the Losers Club or afraid of getting hurt, or is actually hurt, or is just playing with them. Because when they drive him back, he still has that same goofy grin. Whenever he turns into a monster, he has that same smiley, goofy grin. So you can never tell, like, what's going on with it. Pennywise in this doesn't actually seem like a calculating, cruel, evil entity. He just seems like some dumb beast who eats because he needs fear to survive. That's part of what Pennywise is, but he has a thought process. He actually is evil. He's not just some dumb animal who does things because he needs to. And that's one of the reasons I love Tim Curry as Pennywise. He had a range of emotions. You saw when he was friendly and nice because he wanted to lure the children in to trust him. Then you saw when he got all evil and mean. You saw the true evil that was within Pennywise. You actually saw when he got angry at the Losers Club. You saw when he was in pain. And it had different emotions in the book. There's a whole point in the book where it's just from its perspective. And it talks about how he began to feel fear, how he began to feel actual hatred at the Losers Club because they were the ones who managed to hurt him. You see that in the encounter with Pennywise in the sewers in the miniseries. It gets pissed at them when Bill suggests to Bev that she hurry up and kill it. He gets mad. He's like, how dare you think you could kill me? I'm eternal and the eater of worlds and children, and you are the ones who are going to be next. And before that, he scoffs at the idea that they could actually kill him. So when it was actually in pain or in hurt, you knew that this guy was on the run. Or you felt like, man, the kids are in trouble. He's really pissed. In the movie, there's no sense of tension because you never feel like Pennywise has the upper hand or like he's actually going to kill them or if he's just joking with them. The whole final battle in the sewers was entirely stupid. They pretty much wrestle with him. They're able to get on top of him and start like choking him and, putting their weight on him to make him like get down to the ground before they start just impaling him with stuff. And he never once think that, maybe the kids are in trouble because he seems like kind of pathetic the whole time because he's always in that smiley mood. Oh, and speaking of goofy, when you see him in the sewers just looked so stupid in this. I mean, look, the sewers in the miniseries actually seemed really creepy because it actually seemed like a place where maybe people once worked before Pennywise went in there and started killing a bunch of them, And you had them floating around as the deadlights sucking people up and killing them. And you had all the fog around and everything. Here it's like, it seems kind of creepy when they're going down the well at first, but then you get in there and there's like a literal circus stage. Why? I mean, I know Pennywise turns into a clown in front of children, but why would he have a circus stage in the sewer? And why, when Beverly first gets in there, why would he pop out of the circus stage and start doing a hoedown dance like this, kicking his legs out, having a serious face while he's doing that? The one time Pennywise, or the second time Pennywise has a serious face in the movie, he's doing a silly dance, which totally just lessens the impact of him having a scary face for like the first time in 100 minutes. And can someone explain to me why the script called for Pennywise's murder victims to actually float in a circle in the air in the sewers? That's not what it meant when Pennywise said, "You'll float too." "You'll float too" had two meanings. One was floating bodies in the sewer water, floating corpses. The second meaning was once Pennywise kills you, your souls end up in this kind of limbo that the deadlights take you in, and you're trapped and they're floating forever. Those were the two meanings of "you'll float too," not literally floating in a circle in the air until Pennywise dies. Because after they kill Pennywise, you see the body stop floating. But why? For one thing, Pennywise isn't dead. You know that because there's a chapter 2 where they're all adults. Secondly, once you look into the deadlights, even when Pennywise dies, you're still in the deadlights floating around for all eternity. Because the deadlights still exist elsewhere outside the universe. It's not just whatever Pennywise's essence was within Derry. There's more deadlights that exist. The final battle sucked in this version, let's be honest. They do a little wrestling with him, then impale his face with some stuff, then he falls back into a hole and says "fear," and then disintegrates. There was no tension to it whatsoever. You never felt like they were in trouble. There's like one part where you think that Richie is going to betray Bill and leave him in there, but you never really think that. He just picks up a bat and whacks Pennywise with it. It's like, yeah, I saw that coming from a mile away. The miniseries did the final battle so much better. You had them holding hands in a circle, to keep together, and then it targets the weakest one, which was Stanley, and is about to murder him. And the only reason they save him is because they believe the silver will kill evil entities, and then they penetrate its skull with the slingshot and the silver piece. Like, you actually knew that their close bond and their belief was what drove Pennywise back. In the movie, the bond between the Losers Club doesn't look all that close. So the final battle, it looks like they just kicked the crap out of him and he fled the scene because he couldn't take it anymore. I can say without question that the 1990 miniseries starring Tim Curry and Jonathan Brandis is much better than this. It's one of those cases where less is more in terms of kills, and I actually felt a stronger bond between the Losers Club. The acting was a little better, and Tim Curry made for a much more compelling It. From a narrative standpoint, the story's just told much better, and I enjoyed the experience a lot more. And it says quite a lot that the 1990 version ends up being a much more enjoyable experience of It than the movie that just came out, considering all the restrictions on the budget and on what they could show on network TV. There's just so much wasted potential with this one, and I honest to goodness cannot understand people's love for this movie. I really feel like this is just manufactured hype with paid for bots trying to get people to watch the movie, because I almost wish I hadn't spent $20 to see this. At the very least, It Chapter 2 is going to be much better than the miniseries version of Chapter 2, which is when they were all adults, because that was just a hot mess. And I'm not going to defend that. I mean, there are a couple cool scenes in the adult part of the miniseries. The first one being where it covers the moon and breaks Henry Bowers out of the insane asylum, and the other part where he shows his deadlights to Audra and starts going, "Don't you want it? Don't you want it?" That part was actually funny. But yeah, there's very little chance that Chapter 2 of It can end up worse than the miniseries version of Chapter 2. So I'm still going to see it, and I'll probably enjoy it because there will be nothing to be disappointed about. I just hope they actually show kills that aren't cut like a PG-13 movie. I mean, at least have that. And now that this movie was such a success, maybe they'll spend a little bit more on the CGI. Just a thought. I really just needed to let out why I did not enjoy this movie, because everyone else I talk to seems to love it. And I'm sure there are people out there who exist who agree with me. So if you agree or even disagree with me, I'd love to read your comments. Thanks for watching.